Hi guys, it's Mena, and today in this video I'm going to read you guys Little Mermaid from the Princess Class. It's just stories. So, I actually tried to read this like 3 times, but I had to read it in the dark, which is not really good because my light was flickering earlier and I wasn't sure if it was about to burn out, so I just turned it off just in case. So, hopefully it does not burn out while I'm reading this. So, here we go. Far out at sea, the water is as blue as the petals of the prettiest cornflower and as clear as the purest glass, but it's very deep, deeper than any anchor can reach. Many church steeples would have to be piled up one on top of the other to reach from the bottom of the sea up to the surface. Down there live the sea people. Now you mustn't for a moment imagine that there's nothing but bare white sand down there. Oh no, the most wonderful trees and plants are at the bottom of the sea. Their stalks and leaves bend so easily that they stir with the slightest movement of the water as if they were alive. All the fish, large and small, glide between the branches just as birds fly through the trees up here. Down in the deepest spot of the castle of the Sea King, its walls are built of coral and long pointed windows are made of the clearest amber. The roof is formed of shells that open and close with the current. It's a pretty sight, for each shell has a dazzling pearl, any one of which would be a splendid ornament for a queen's crown. The Sea King had been a widower for some years, and his aged mother kept house for him. She was an intelligent woman, but proud when it came to her noble birth. That's why she wore 12 oysters on her tail, while everyone else of high rank had to settle for 6. Otherwise, she deserved great praise, for she was very devoted to her granddaughters, the little sea princesses. They were 6 pretty children, but the youngest was the loveliest of them all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose leaf. Her eyes were as blue as the deepest sea, but like all of the others, she had no feet, and her body ended in a fishtail. All day long the sea princesses played in the great halls of the castle, there where the flowers grew high out of the walls. The large amber windows were open, and the fish swam in, and just as swallows fly into our homes when we open the windows. The fish glided right up to the princesses, fed from their hands, and waited to be patted. Outside the castle there was a beautiful garden with trees of deep blue and fiery red. Each of the little princesses had her own plot in the garden, the shape of a garden, where she could dig and plant as she pleased. One arranged her flower bed in the shape of a whale. Another thought it was nicer to make hers like the figure of the Little Mermaid, but the youngest made hers quite round like the sun, and she wanted nothing but flowers that shone red like it. She was a curious child and quite thoughtful. While her sisters decorated their gardens with wonderful things they obtained from sunken ships, she would have nothing but rose red flowers that were like the sun high above, and a beautiful marble statue that was of a handsome boy chiseled from pure white stone, and it had come down to the bottom of the sea after a shipwreck. Nothing pleased the princess more than to hear of the world of humans above the sea. Her old grandmother had to tell her all she knew of the ships, the towns, the people, and the animals. When you are 15, the grandmother told the princesses, we will let you rise to the surface and sit on the rocks in the moonlight while the... Hang on! The great ships sail past. You will see both forests. None of the mermaids was more curious than the youngest, and she was so silent and thoughtful, also had the longest wait. Many a night she stood at this open window and gazed up through the dark waters where the fish with their fins and tails. She could see the moon and the stars, even though their light was rather pale. Through the water they looked much larger than they do to us. If a black cloud passed above her, she knew that it was either a whale swimming over her or a vessel filled with passengers. These people never imagined that a pretty little mermaid was beneath them, stretching up her white arms toward the keel of the ship. Before the approach of the storm, when they expected a shipwreck, the sisters would swim from of the vessel, singing sweetly of delights to be found in the depths of the sea. They told the sailors not to be afraid of sinking down to the bottom, but the sailors never understood their songs. They thought they were hearing the howling of the storm, nor did they ever see any of the delights the mermaids promised, because if a ship shrunk, the men were drowned, and only as dead men did they reach to the palace of the Sea King. When the sisters floated up arm in arm through the in in this way, their youngest sister would always stay back all alone, gazing after them. She would have cried, but mermaids have no tears and suffer even more than we do. Oh, if I were only 15, she would say, I know I will love the world up there and all the people who live in it. Then, at last, she turned 15. Well, now you'll soon be off your hands, said the old dowager queen, her grandmother. Come, let me dress you up like your other sisters. And she put a wreath of white lilies in her hair, and each flower petal was half a pearl, and the old woman ordered 8 big oysters to nip tight onto the princess's tail to show her high rank. Ow, that hurt, said the little mermaid. Yes, beauty has its price. The grandmother replied how the princess would have liked to shake off all its finery and put away the heavy wreath. The red flowers in her garden suited her much better, but she did not dare make any changes. Farewell, she said as she rose through the water as lightly and clearly as the bubbles moved to the surface. The sun had just set as she lifted her head above the waves, but the clouds were still tinted with crimson and gold. Up in the pale pink sky, the evening star shone clear and bright. The air was mild and fresh, and the sea dead calm. A large three-masted ship was drifting in the water, with only one sailor hoisting because not a breath of wind was stirring. The sailors were lollying about in the rigging of the ringing and on the yards. There was music and singing on board, and when it grew dark, 100 lanterns were lit. With their many colors, it looked as if the flags of all nations were fluttering in the air. The little mermaid swam right up to the porthole of the cabin, and every time a wave lifted her up, she could see a crowd of well-dressed people through the clear glass. Among them was a prince, the handsomest person there, with large dark eyes. He could have not been more than 16. It was his birthday, and that's why there was so much of a stir. When the young prince came out on deck, where the sailors were dancing, more than 100 rockets swished up into the air and broke into a glitter, making the sky bright as day. The little mermaid was so startled that she dove down under the water, but back popped her head out again, and it was just as if all the stars up in heaven were falling down on her. She had never seen fireworks. Great suns went spinning around, gorgeous fiery fishes swooped into the blue air, and all glitter was reflected in the clear, calm waters below. The sun itself was so brightly illuminated that you could see not only everyone there, but even the smallest piece of rope. How handsome the young prince looked as he shook hands with the sailors. He laughed and smiled as the music sounded through the lovely night air. It grew late, but the little mermaid could not take her eyes off the ship or the handsome prince. The color lanterns had been extinguished, the rockets no longer rose in the air, and the cannon had ceased fire. But the sea had become restless, and you could hear a moaning, grumbling sound beneath the waves. Still the mermaid stayed in the water, rocking up and down so that she could look in the cabin. The ship gathered speed. One after another of its sails was unfurled. The waves rose higher, heavy clouds darkened the sky, and lightning flashed in the distance. A dreadful storm was brewing. So the sailors took in the sails, while the great ships rocked and scooted through the raging sea. The waves rose higher and higher until they were the same huge black mountains threatening to bring down the mast. The little mermaid suddenly realized that the ship was in danger. She herself had to be careful of the beams and bits of wreckage drifting in the water. One moment it was so dark that she could not see a thing, but then a flash of lightning lit up everyone on board. Now it was every man for himself. She was looking for the young prince, and just as the ship was being torn apart, she saw him disappear into the depths of the sea. For just a moment she was quite pleased, for she had thought he would now live with her part of the world. But then she remembered that human beings could not live underwater, and that only as a dead man could he come down to her father's palace. No, he must not die. So she swam in among the drifted beams and planks. Oblivious to the danger of being crushed, she delved deep down and came right back up. Okay, so the video seems to be getting long right now, so I think I'm going to stop it here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this part. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye!